Thank you for listening to this censored news broadcast. Security services are now facing questions about whether more could have been done to prevent attack. Welcome to the Court of Public Opinion. Well, I think you know that a lot of people have opinions about these type of attacks, so we're going to get right into this story in the UK. After the attack in Manchester and then this attack, these are the suspects that were named, and forgive me if I don't get these names correctly, but second attacker, Rashid Rouhani, was now known to authorities. And then we're just going to let the tape roll because there's a couple more suspects here. The third attacker, 22-year-old Moroccan Italian Youssef Zagba. And then he wanted to be a terrorist. This was his goal. Zagba was named and also passed on to intelligence. And then the first one, he was reported to police in East London Park, and even appeared in a Channel 4 documentary in the Jihadist next door. So, if you were to look at some of the concerns here regarding the UK attack or attacks like this in Europe, I think there's a couple things you can take away. The moderates, we're not talking about religious moderates. We're talking about the moderates, the ones in the middle, the murky ground, that they can't condemn it because they've been silenced into fear. So we're hearing reports about actual people who are being attacked, afraid to speak out and defend themselves. This is called learned behavior, okay? They've been taught to be afraid, okay? So the only thing they have is their voice, and they're being silenced, okay? So when Teresa May just came out that she's going to change the way they handle terrorism, do you know in some of these reports that each of these attackers were being tracked? An Imam even warned Dublin police that this particular individual was he actually felt that he was going to act on his extremist behavior. Extremist, like the word extremist, like that's loosely defined. But when we think in terms that his own Imam reported him, okay, they actually had to throw some of these people out of their mosque. So there you are. And the police had them on their radar. In fact, they were questioning these people, and then they went ahead and did the text. So do they look the other way? I mean, what's going on with British intelligence if they're not looking at the suspects and doing something to prevent it? Prevent it. This is a key word, okay? And the ways to prevent it is more awareness. And when they track an individual, not just wait till they attack after the fact. And that's been the issue in Europe. That's been the issue in Paris. It's like they all have these people on the radar. And forget racial profiling. Even the imams were reporting this to the Dublin police, because one suspect was living in Dublin, and then he lived in East London, and he was radicalizing children. And it's like it's going on in plain sight, okay? And here's the problem with the UK citizens. They can't say anything, and if you do, there are people inside in the UK that if you say anything, you'll get ratted out. That's how it is, for fear that they're going to attack. This is that line of thinking. This is what fear does. They're actually afraid of people saying something in fear of retaliation. Okay, let's ready for this? That's domestic violence. That's what I'm talking about. Anytime you report something, there's fear of retaliation. So I'm going to apply some things that I know about therapy and domestic violence. The reason why that is because of the good old word, ratting people out. You're afraid to say something for fear of retaliation. And that is what's happening. So Teresa May has passed a law about how to deal with their terrorism problem. Okay, meaning stricter immigration. So let's talk about immigration, because here in the United States, if now the new immigration policy is if they don't take back the deportees, they will not be allowed to issue any more visas, which is making a difference. So hopefully Teresa May is taking this seriously, because she cannot barter her citizens, the citizens of the UK, our friends on the other side of the pond, who are afraid to say anything. They could be arrested for even speaking out. And that goes to what's going on in London because of the mayor. And that's what we're talking about, this moderate. The moderates, whether that be in America, whether that be in UK or Paris, that is the reason, because they're not saying anything. They just want to normalize violence. Look the other way. Just look the other way. Therefore, nothing, you see nothing here. There's nothing happen here. That is the way they have been doing it. That's how they allow these type of crimes to continue. Because if you can look the other way, or you could just skirt it under the rug, that's really not the problem. They're not articulating the problem. They're not looking at the real issue. And the real issue is they've trained most of the people to not say anything. Or in some cases, I don't think they understand fully what Islam Jihadis' plan is to do. I don't think they fully understand how to defeat it. Maybe not that they fully don't understand jihadi, because that's not the concern. They've been literally doing TV shows about it. What they don't understand is how to defeat Islam. And looking back in history, which I've heard some other things about, a recent congressman in Louisiana calling out for a holy war. When Christians start standing up and they understand that the war they're in, it's to it comes down to eradicating Christianity and Judaism, because those two different systems, one thing that's different about Sharia and the difference between Judeo-Christianity is that you have freedoms to practice your religions, and the opposite is true of Islam, Sharia. They're the one and only religion that you're allowed under their system of law, which are a couple layers to that, okay? And I don't want to go into that because that would require a little bit more homework and reading, and I don't want to misquote anything. The problem with these two very different legal systems, according to Judeo-Christianity, you'd have to throw out moral law, ceremonial law, civil law, okay, which is similar to what happened in Greco-Roman times, okay? I mean, there's some similarities. The difference is, if you go back in history, why the Dark Ages happened and why there was a holy war and how they wanted to take credit for this. Okay, the Ottoman Empire did fall. So apparently what happened during that time, during the Spanish Inquisition, is exactly what has happened today. It was about spreading Islam and taking over the countries. And they have a way of doing that, okay? Here in America, there are people, they've accepted it. I have to tell you, training children. I've done a report here in the Post-Gazette. I'll put the link below. How they're teaching girls to wear hijabs. It's trendy, it looks good, and it's all about the cultural jihad. Cultural jihad, which of course muddies the water so that people can accept it. Because look, if you wear a trendy, headscarf and it looks, hey, they even have a fashion runway. All it is conditioning. And it's look the other way. Don't say anything, because, if you say something, you're going to go to jail. That's what's happening in London. That's what's happening in parts of the world. They cannot speak for themselves. They can't say anything about this because, for obvious reasons, they don't have the same freedom of speech to exercise. And here in America, you have that luxury, but yet you don't educate yourself, you don't pay attention, or you're just kind of just on that slippery slope. Or it's because of our education system that a lot of people do not articulate the issues, and we're all learning, okay? I don't want to just point fingers here, because there's a lot of information to try to sort through, okay? Where it comes down to is here's where it's a tricky. They clothe it in misogyny, they clothe it in racism, when it's none of those things. We can make the same argument that it's reverse racism. Okay, when people can get past the superficial issues, whether it's your color, once you get past all those things, it comes down to the battle between good and evil. I mean, so many people are so malcontent. They're talking about, well, you looked at them the wrong way. Oh my goodness. Or your religious beliefs interfere. I don't know anyone that really particularly cares about how you practice your religion, as long as it doesn't end up in murder and violence, okay? I mean, the same can be said about how some people view their own religious views here. And they want to unify. I have to tell you, I've never seen a couple people agree on one thing at the same time, all the time. How are you going to get all these people to unify unless you silence them, or you have to ignore or stuff or push away or look the other way? What you just saw there didn't happen. That is that mentality. That's that moderate, that middle murky ground where no one says anything. Just pretend it didn't happen. It didn't happen. This goes back to that whole thing I was telling you about, the whole dynamic of domestic violence, which this is a case of domestic violence. When you're battered and battered and battered and you don't say anything until finally you have no choice, or it's your life, and you're pushed to that point. Somebody that's never known violence knows the difference, okay? The greatest fear is retaliation, because if you do say something, you're going to go to jail. That, I don't know how they got away with that. I don't know. It's not saying something. Well, actually, no, I take it back. Saying something will get you in trouble in London if you say the things that they're saying, okay? Meaning they don't have the same freedom of speech, the ability to exercise it, because if they do, they're going to go to jail. So that means they're going to have to be very vague, very careful with what you say, because you, the person in London, can't speak out against it. Meaning that you're taught learned helplessness. That's what that's not to say that everybody exercises learned helplessness, but that is how you get people to not say anything, and they're helpless. They become helpless victims, and that's all I can say. I have such great compassion for the London citizens that are sitting here in shock, trying to come to terms with this. Okay. Well, and my hope is that Prime Minister Theresa May seriously takes this new legislation and not only arm her police force and British intelligence, but arm her people with information, the ability to speak without penalty, without going to jail. What a system to live under, that you have no way to speak out, to silence the victims this way, to silence the people. It breaks my heart, man. My hope is that, yes, Prime Minister Theresa May takes a serious approach to how she allows her own citizens to exercise those freedoms without fear of retaliation. I don't know. That is the whole reason, that was the whole premise to why the Christian Crusades occurred among the Ottoman Empire, is they learn to use their English language and exercise it. And that is, the key is linguistics. And you're hearing a lot of this language being used. Okay, so we're going to end it here. Thank you for listening.